What happens when a symbol of calm strength suddenly loses her composure on live television? When Wonder Woman herself, Gal Gadot, stands face-to-face with the View's most unapologetic voice, Joy Behar, and something inside her finally breaks. It started innocently enough. The studio lights of the View gleamed brighter than usual that morning, catching a soft reflection off Gal's silver blouse. The air was buzzing, that strange mix of anticipation and chaos that only daytime TV could create. The audience had packed in early, phones ready, whispers ricocheting through the room. They were expecting charm, poise, and laughter. But what they got was a clash no one could have predicted. Gal Gadot sat poised, her posture immaculate, her smile effortless. She had come to promote her latest film, a humanitarian drama about resilience and peace. The irony wouldn't be lost on anyone later. Joy Behar leaned back in her chair, flipping through her cards with that knowing smirk that always hinted she was about to stir the pot. The conversation began politely enough. Whoopi welcomed Gal warmly. Sunny Hostin praised her advocacy for women in the military, and even Sarah Haynes complimented her performance. But then, as the applause faded, Joy leaned forward. "So, Gal," Joy began, her tone playful but edged with something sharper. "You talk a lot about peace and empowerment. But don't you think sometimes, especially coming from someone who served in the Israeli military, that message sounds a little complicated?" The air changed. A soft gasp rolled through the studio audience. Even the stage manager, half hidden behind the cameras, froze mid-step. Gal's smile flickered, not gone but strained. She tilted her head slightly, processing, her eyes narrowing just a fraction. "I believe peace is built from understanding," she replied calmly. "And service for me was never about aggression. It was about protecting, about responsibility." Joy chuckled under her breath. "Sure, but for a lot of people watching, it might sound like preaching peace while holding a weapon, you know? It's a bit contradictory." A few audience members laughed nervously. Others shifted in their seats. Gal leaned forward now, her voice lowering, a quiet strength pushing through her accent. "Joy, with all due respect, I think you're simplifying something very personal. I don't talk about violence, I talk about compassion. And compassion sometimes means standing up for others." Joy shrugged, her eyes glinting. "I'm just saying, people might not see it that way. Maybe you should acknowledge that not everyone's experience of your peace is the same." The word "your" landed hard. For the first time, Gal's composure cracked. Her jaw tensed. "Peace isn't something that belongs to me," she said, her tone tightening. "It's something we all have to fight for, sometimes literally. You live in a country that's had to do that, too." The studio went silent. Even Whoopi blinked, unsure whether to intervene. Joy laughed awkwardly, waving her hand. "Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying America's perfect. But it's not about me, it's about you, Gal. You're the face of peace, the Wonder Woman of diplomacy. Surely you can take a little pushback." The audience gave a low, uneasy chuckle. Gal's lips parted slightly, a deep breath, steady but sharp. "There's a difference between pushback and provocation," she said slowly. "And sometimes people forget that words can wound, too." The camera cut to Joy, who arched an eyebrow, sensing the shift, the tightening of energy, the edge creeping into the conversation. She leaned in again, almost smiling. "Well, I'm just saying, Gal, people who go on talk shows usually expect a few tough questions. You're not in Themyscira anymore." The audience oot. Gal's eyes flashed. That same look millions recognized from the screen, fierce but heartbreakingly human. She straightened her back, glanced at the camera, then turned to Joy. "Tough questions are fine," she said. "But disrespect isn't." A sharp intake of breath from the crowd. Joy tilted her head. "Disrespect? Come on now. You're reading too much into it. We just like a good debate here." "Debate," Gal echoed softly. "That's not what this feels like." The silence after that was suffocating. Whoopi stepped in finally, laughing lightly, trying to steer the segment away. Okay, ladies, let's not turn this table into a battlefield. Gal, tell us about your film." Gal smiled thinly, trying to reset. "It's a story about hope," she said. "About people who choose to keep believing in humanity, even when it's tested." But Joy wasn't done. She let out a chuckle that cut right through the tension. "Well, I hope you're ready for the comment section after this one," she quipped. The crowd laughed uncertainly, unsure if it was safe to join in. Gal exhaled, a subtle, controlled breath. Her eyes didn't waver from Joy's. And for a moment, everything, the audience, the lights, the noise, seemed to fall away. She smiled, but it wasn't polite anymore. It was the kind of smile that carried meaning, the kind that said I've had enough. You know, Joy, she said, voice calm but steely. It's easy to joke when you've never had to fight for peace. But some of us don't have that luxury. The room froze. A murmur rippled through the audience, half admiration, half disbelief. Even Joy blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Gal leaned back, resting her hands in her lap, composure restored, but her eyes still burning. And in that quiet, the energy in the studio shifted, from playful to electric, from entertainment to confrontation. No one said another word for a full 3 seconds. Then, like an echo, the applause started, slow at first, then swelling, uncertain but instinctive. Joy forced a smile. Gal held hers. The break cue light flashed red. Cameras cut. But everyone watching, in the studio and at home, knew something real had just happened. Something raw. And it wasn't over yet. The tension from that morning didn't end when the red light on the camera went dark. It lingered, thick and unspoken, in the air of the View's studio. Crew members whispered in the corners, glancing nervously between Gal and Joy, who sat frozen in their seats during the commercial break. The audience murmured, too. Some clapped in awkward support, others shifted uneasily. Everyone could feel it, the friction, the sense that something had snapped beneath the glossy surface of morning television. Gal sat still, her hands clasped together. Beneath her composed expression, her pulse was hammering. She wasn't used to this, to being cornered, questioned not as an actress or advocate, but as a person carrying the weight of her past. Across from her, Joy adjusted her mic, pretending to flip through her cue cards. But she wasn't reading. Her eyes flicked up, watching Gal like a chess opponent planning the next move. When the countdown began, 5, 4, 3, 2, Joy's smirk returned like armor. "And we're back," Whoopi said, her tone brighter than before, trying to cool the air. "We're joined by the incredible Gal Gadot, whose new film Heart of the Earth opens this Friday." Polite applause. Gal nodded, smiling, the perfect guest again. But there was a storm just beneath that calm exterior. Sunny leaned in carefully. "Gal, you were saying before the break that the film's message is about hope and unity. After the past few years, that's something we all need." "Absolutely," Gal replied smoothly. "The story reminds us that unity doesn't mean agreeing on everything. It means understanding, even when it's hard." It was a graceful recovery. The audience responded warmly, relieved to see the tension ease. But Joy wasn't ready to let go. "So, Gal," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "you talk about unity and understanding, but let me ask, do you think that applies to everyone? Even those who disagree with how you see things politically?" A hush fell over the crowd. Whoopi's eyes darted toward Joy, warning her silently. Gal blinked once. "Everyone," she said. "Even people who disagree. That's the only way peace works." Joy laughed lightly, but it wasn't friendly. "That's a nice answer, but it's kind of vague, isn't it? I mean, you've been pretty outspoken about world issues. Some would say that makes you part of the problem." A collective gasp. Someone in the audience muttered, "Oh, come on." Gal's face didn't flinch, but her eyes did. Just a flicker. Enough to betray the sting. "I'm part of the problem?" she repeated softly. Joy shrugged. "Hey, I'm just saying what people are thinking. When you're a public figure, you have to expect scrutiny." There it was, that familiar Behar confidence, the line between interviewer and instigator blurred. Gal leaned forward slowly, folding her hands. Her accent sharpened her words, each one deliberate. "Scrutiny is fine, but there's a difference between asking questions and making accusations." Joy smiled tightly. "You're reading too much into it, sweetheart. Don't be so sensitive." That word, sweetheart, hit like a slap. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. Even Sunny glanced at Joy, frowning. Gal's jaw tightened. Her next words came low, controlled, but with a quiet fury. "Don't call me that." Joy blinked. "Excuse me? Don't call me sweetheart. I'm not your sweetheart." The tension snapped like glass. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Even Whoopi looked startled. Gal leaned back, eyes unwavering. "I've been called many things, Joy, but that one, it feels dismissive. You asked for honesty, so here it is." Joy let out a nervous laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Okay, relax. It's just an expression." "It's not to me," Gal said. "Words matter, especially from people who make a living using them." Whoopi quickly interjected. All right, let's keep it cool, ladies. We're not trying to start World War III here." The audience chuckled lightly, desperate for relief. But the tension didn't fade. It just shifted. Gal took a deep breath, trying to center herself. She smiled again, not for joy, not for the cameras, but for control. "I'm here to talk about something meaningful," she said. "Not to play verbal ping-pong over what I believe." "Fair enough," Joy said, sitting back. But her tone carried that same smirk. "You're good at staying on message. Wonder Woman training, huh?" Gal didn't laugh. She just looked at her. That piercing gaze that silenced even the boldest hosts. "You know, Joy," she said finally, "I think people sometimes mistake kindness for weakness. I don't raise my voice because I don't have to." The audience erupted in applause. Even Whoopi couldn't hide her grin. "Now that's a headline right there." Joy chuckled, pretending to laugh along, but her face was tightening. "Oh, don't get all philosophical on me, Gal. It's just daytime TV." Gal's reply came like a whisper, soft but cutting. "Maybe that's the problem." Silence. The cameras rolled, capturing every flicker of emotion. Gal's calm defiance, Joy's forced composure, the crowd's growing fascination. Sunny tried to steer the segment again. "Gal, I actually love that point. You're saying even daytime TV can carry real meaning." Gal smiled at her, grateful. "Exactly. People underestimate how powerful these conversations can be." The tension finally seemed to ease, but the damage was done. The moment had already gone viral in the making. The audience knew they had witnessed something unscripted, something real. When the next commercial break hit, the studio buzzed like a live wire. Producers huddled near the stage, whispering urgently. Whoopi rubbed her temples. Sunny leaned toward Joy, muttering something inaudible. Gal stood up quietly, adjusting her blouse. She wasn't angry, not anymore. Just done. Joy looked up from her cue cards, perhaps realizing she had gone too far. But instead of apologizing, she offered a strained smile. "No hard feelings, right?" Gal paused. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she met Joy's gaze with a calm that could freeze fire. "No," she said softly. "Just lessons learned." She walked off set, heels clicking against the stage floor. The audience murmured, phones already out, faces alight with shock and thrill. Joy sat there, suddenly aware of the cameras still rolling, of the weight of silence after Gal's exit. She forced a laugh. "Well," she muttered, "that was intense." Whoopi sighed. "You think?" The screen faded to black for another commercial, but the conversation, both inside the studio and across the internet, was only just beginning. When the broadcast returned after the commercial break, Gal Gadot was no longer in her seat. Her coffee mug sat untouched, the faint imprint of lipstick on its rim the only proof she'd been there. The audience whispered, confused, glancing from the empty chair to the panel of hosts who were suddenly too still, too rehearsed. Whoopi cleared her throat, adjusting her glasses as she forced a smile. "Well, live TV, folks. You never know what's going to happen." Gal Gadot had to step away for a moment, but we'll keep the show going. A polite smattering of applause followed, thin and awkward. Joy Behar tried to match Whoopi's composure, but the corners of her mouth twitched. She leaned toward Sunny, whispering, "Did she really just walk off?" Sunny gave a curt nod. "She's upset, Joy. What did you expect?" Joy scoffed under her breath. "Oh, come on. I didn't say anything that bad. You'd think she's never been challenged before." Whoopi shot her a sharp glance. "Joy, maybe it wasn't about what you said. Maybe it was how you said it." The words hung there, heavy-loaded. Meanwhile, backstage, Gal stood in front of the makeup mirror, her reflection glowing beneath the harsh bulbs. Her assistant hovered nearby, silent. Gal's fingers trembled as she removed her mic. "They think it's entertainment," she murmured, voice shaking. "They think disrespect is part of the show." Her assistant tried to speak, but Gal raised a hand, eyes still locked on her reflection. "You know, I've faced harder moments in my life. But somehow this felt worse. Maybe because it wasn't about war or hate. It was about dismissal. That's what stings, being dismissed." A stagehand approached gently. "Miss Gadot, they're asking if you'd like to return for the next segment." Gal's eyes flickered toward him, calm, unreadable. "No," she said quietly. "They've said enough. And so have I." The stagehand nodded and retreated. Back on stage, Whoopi tried to fill the silence with humor. "So, Sarah, you ever had a guest walk off before?" Sarah smiled nervously. "Not one that graceful." The audience laughed, but the unease was palpable. Social media notifications were already pinging across the crew's phones. Clips of Gal's final words. Kindness isn't weakness. We're already being clipped, captioned, and shared. Joy glanced toward the audience, noticing a few raised phones still recording. She leaned into her mic. Okay, let's be honest. I asked a tough question, maybe too tough. But hey, that's the View. We challenge people. If she can't handle that, maybe. Don't, Whoopi cut in firmly, her voice low but commanding. Don't finish that sentence. Joy blinked. What? I'm just saying. No, you're not, Whoopi said. You're poking the bear after it's already left the room. The crowd reacted audibly. Some clapped, some gasped. Joy leaned back, rolling her eyes. Oh, for heaven's sake. Everyone's so sensitive these days. Sunny exhaled deeply. It's not about sensitivity, Joy. It's about tone. You crossed a line, and everyone in this room felt it. Joy opened her mouth, ready to fire back, but then she saw the faces around her. Even Sarah, usually neutral, avoided her eyes. For the first time that morning, Joy looked uncertain. Okay, she muttered. Maybe I pushed too hard. I didn't mean for her to take it personally. Whoopi sighed, shaking her head. You don't always get to decide how someone takes it. The audience applauded softly, almost supportively toward Whoopi's side. As the show limped through its final minutes, the tension never really dissolved. It just hardened into something unspoken. When the closing theme finally played, Joy stood quickly, mumbling something to Sunny. Whoopi walked off quietly, her expression unreadable. But outside the studio, the storm was already brewing. By the time Gal reached her car, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Notifications scrolled endlessly, clips of the exchange already flooding TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. Hashtag Gal Gadot on The View trended within 20 minutes. Some defended her. Gal handled that with pure class. Joy was way out of line. Others sided with Joy. It's The View. She should have known what she was walking into. Gal sat in the back seat of her car, scrolling through the headlines as they multiplied. Gal Gadot walks off The View after heated exchange with Joy Behar. Gal snaps back. Don't call me sweetheart. When Wonder Woman met The View's firebrand, her driver hesitated before asking softly, Home, Miss Gadot? She nodded, still looking at her screen. Yes, but drive slow. As the car pulled away, she leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur past. She thought about the irony, coming to promote a film about unity and leaving in the middle of a televised confrontation. Her assistant spoke gently from the front seat. You were amazing in there, Gal. You didn't lose your cool. Everyone saw your grace. Gal smiled faintly. Grace doesn't always win in TV clips. Outrage does. Meanwhile, Joy sat alone in the green room, scrolling through her own feed. Her notifications were just as relentless. Her name was trending too, but not the way she wanted. Clips of her smirking, calling Gal sweetheart, played over and over with captions like disrespect on live TV and Joy Behar goes too far. She frowned, tossing her phone onto the couch. Oh, please, she muttered. Everyone's suddenly a saint online. But then an unfamiliar feeling crept in. Not guilt exactly, but awareness. Maybe she had crossed a line. Maybe this one wasn't going to blow over by tomorrow's headlines. The studio manager entered quietly. ABC wants to review the segment before posting it online. They're concerned. Joy sighed, rubbing her temples. Of course they are. The manager hesitated. They also asked if you'd like to reach out to Gal's team. Joy looked up. To apologize? Or to clarify, he said diplomatically. She didn't answer. Outside, the New York afternoon blazed with noise, horns, chatter, the endless pulse of the city. But in that green room, for the first time in years, Joy Behar was quiet. She sat back, closing her eyes, and for just a moment, the laughter and confidence that defined her career seemed to fade. Because for once, she wasn't sure she'd won. The fallout came fast. Faster than anyone on The View's production team could have predicted. By the next morning, the confrontation between Gal Gadot and Joy Behar had become the most talked-about segment in daytime television history. Clips of the exchange flooded every platform. TikTok edits set to dramatic music. Twitter threads dissecting every facial expression. YouTube channels analyzing the power dynamic between the two women frame by frame. Hashtags dominated the trending lists. Hashtag Gal vs. Joy, hashtag Don't Call Me Sweetheart, and hashtag The View Meltdown. Morning headlines screamed from every entertainment outlet. Gal Gadot stuns View hosts, walks out mid-segment. Joy Behar accused of disrespect after Gal Gadot clash. Wonder Woman goes to war on The View. The internet had chosen sides. One clip, in particular, went viral, the moment Gal leaned forward and said, "Don't call me sweetheart. I'm not your sweetheart." It played endlessly, captioned as the line that silenced Joy Behar. Comment sections became battlefields. Some viewers praised Gal's composure and boundaries. She handled that with dignity. That's how you shut down condescension. Gal Gadot didn't lose her cool. She reclaimed her respect. Others defended Joy, claiming it was harmless TV banter. Joy's just being Joy. People are too sensitive these days. It's a talk show, not a therapy session. Grow thicker skin. But beneath all the noise, one thing was clear. Everyone was watching. By noon, talk show analysts, entertainment blogs, and even late-night hosts were replaying the footage. Memes spread. Reaction videos soared. And for the first time in years, the View's ratings skyrocketed, for all the wrong reasons. Inside ABC's Manhattan offices, executives held emergency calls, debating whether to release a public statement. The show's producers were torn. The confrontation had boosted viewership, but it had also exposed a deeper tension within the show's culture. Meanwhile, Gal Gadot remained silent. Her team issued a brief statement through her publicist. Gal believes in meaningful conversation, not confrontation. She stands by her message of respect and empathy, even in moments of disagreement. That calm response only added to her mystique. People admired her restraint. In a world built on outrage, her silence spoke louder than words. But behind the scenes, Gal wasn't as serene as her statement suggested. In her Los Angeles home, she sat on the edge of her sofa, scrolling through the endless storm of online discourse. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and colleagues, some supportive, others warning her to stay quiet. Her husband entered the room quietly. "You're still reading it?" Gal nodded. "It's everywhere. I didn't even think it was that big of a deal. But the way people are twisting it." He sat beside her, gently taking her phone. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. You said what you felt. That's all." Gal smiled faintly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Maybe. But it's strange. I've done action movies, stunts, scenes where I've faced explosions. And somehow this felt scarier. Just words. Just sitting at a table." He smiled softly. Sometimes words hit harder than anything else. Across the country, Joy Behar wasn't handling things as gracefully. At the View offices, she sat in her dressing room, scrolling through a tidal wave of criticism. Social media wasn't kind. Hashtags calling for apologies, think pieces accusing her of bullying, even old clips resurfacing, painting a picture of a host who had gone too far too often. Joy slammed her phone down on the counter. "Oh, give me a break," she muttered. "It's one bad moment, and suddenly I'm the villain of daytime TV?" Whoopi appeared in the doorway, quiet but firm. "It wasn't just a bad moment, Joy." Joy looked up, startled. "You're buying into this too?" Whoopi crossed her arms. "I'm not buying anything. I was there. You didn't just ask a question. You pushed until it wasn't a conversation anymore." Joy sighed, rubbing her temples. "That's my job, Whoopi. I challenge people." Whoopi stepped closer. "There's a difference between challenging and cornering. You're one of the best in this business, Joy, but sometimes you forget when to stop." For the first time in days, Joy didn't answer. She just stared down at her coffee, the weight of the moment settling in. When the next morning's show aired, Joy opened the episode differently than anyone expected. The camera cut to her, alone at the table, voice uncharacteristically soft. "Before we start today," she began, "I want to address something from yesterday's show." The studio fell silent. "I had a tense exchange with Gal Gadot, and I may have crossed a line. I've built my career on being outspoken, but that doesn't mean I can't recognize when I've gone too far. So Gal, if you're watching, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that tone. You deserved respect." The audience applauded, slow but sincere. Whoopi nodded approvingly beside her. Sunny placed a hand on Joy's arm. Sarah smiled softly. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Joy Behar looked human. Across the ocean, Gal saw the clip while preparing for an interview in London. She watched Joy's apology once, then again, her expression unreadable. After a pause, she smiled, a small, understanding smile, and whispered, "Good." Later that day, she broke her silence on Instagram. A simple post, a photo of a sunrise captioned, "Peace takes courage, even when it's uncomfortable." Within hours, the post had millions of likes. Comments poured in. "Queen energy. That's how you rise above. A masterclass in grace." The story began to fade from headlines within a week, replaced by new scandals, new moments of outrage. But that episode of The View would linger, replayed, analyzed, remembered as the day Gal Gadot drew a line and stood her ground. Months later, during a magazine interview, Gal was asked if she regretted walking off. She smiled thoughtfully. "No," she said. "Sometimes silence speaks louder than argument. And sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's clarity." The interviewer nodded. "And joy." Gal smiled again, softer this time. "I think we both learned something that day." And just like that, she closed the chapter. The cameras might have caught the confrontation, but the world had seen something more, a clash of pride and principle, of ego and empathy. And in the end, neither woman walked away unscathed, but both walked away changed. If you were watching that moment, if you felt the tension, the shock, the humanity of it, tell us what you think. Did Joy go too far? Or was Gal too sensitive? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe to Prime Narrator for more powerful, dramatic moments from Hollywood's most unforgettable confrontations. Because sometimes the real drama doesn't happen on the movie screen. It happens live.